We're on the last leg now. This is the main. Coming on to really address about Foundation Day. But I just thought I'd give this little introduction before embarking on Professor O's lecture, in order to really tune us in. We went a long journey, basically from 1945 to up to 2010. We've been on that journey together, and we went on that journey with True Parents. But now I want to bring you back to, I think, some of the things that Jack Corley shared with you last weekend, and to think again about what is Foundation Day. And when you look at this, I'm just going to go and teach Monday and Tuesday, the first couple of days of a 7-day workshop. I'm doing that most months now. And I teach, of course, about this. This is the most memorable and famous and central sort of slide, really, for the principles of creation about the purpose of life, being the 3 blessings. And, of course, amongst the 3 blessings, it's very clear, isn't it, that the central one of the 3 blessings, or the center of the 3 blessings, is actually the second blessing, because it incorporates, right, this ideal husband has to fulfill the first blessing to get to that place, and then ideal wife has to fulfill this first blessing, and then that's included in a sense in the second blessing, and then once that's fulfilled, of course, you're qualified for the third blessing, or to have dominion. So of the 3 blessings, this is the central one, and in this second blessing, of course, this is the central place, right? This is a place where Adam and Eve meet in love. And we talked about that before in the lectures I gave about the settlement place. But Father talks about it also as the place, the palace of, for God, the home place for God and for us, the place that we actually meet our parents, or we're born from our parents, which is not just our physical parents, but actually God, the invisible parents, comes down and meets with the substantial visible parents, and God and our parents are our parents, and we are born from them. That's the starting point of Shonal Guk, which should have begun with Adam and Eve originally. And Father began to speak very openly about that in public, really at the time when Father established the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in 1996. So this is from this very famous speech, In Search of the Origin of the Universe, where Father spoke about that. And recently, I've mentioned it the other day, Hyung Jinim, in our international president, had this experience. After 3 months, finally, he could have the spiritual experience with Father. And what he understood from that is that the central core of the original divine principle is about absolute sex. And that's why Father was continuously talking about it. But although he was there all the time for nearly 2 years attending Father, and Father was continuously talking about it, he didn't really quite fully catch it somehow, amazingly. And we haven't fully caught it. So now he's continuously sharing on that sort of topic. And the sermon he gave about that, the one that he gave to the American clergy in this final seminar to an audience on, I think it was the 15th of December, and it completed the education of 13,000 people in America. And he gave the concluding talk at the end of that weekend seminar. And there were loads of clergy there, but also it was webcast. And he quoted from this particular speech, right? And so I'd just like to read you a little bit from this. Then who or what within God's creation could be God's love partner? Is it man by himself? Or can woman by herself become God's love partner? What kind of partner does God want? Does God need a partner with great wealth? Does he need a partner of knowledge or one of great authority? No, none of these things matter. God wants a love partner. Thus, centering on the place where husband and wife become one through their sexual organs, God wants to appear and meet us. And at this particular time, Father had a very, very prestigious audience with a lot of VIPs in it. And when I remember reading this speech, and this is so, in a sense, so direct, And of course, Father wanted to say all these things much more directly, right back at the beginning. But fundamentally, Father couldn't express what he wrote down with a pencil, right, in Busan. He couldn't express that openly. Already, Father met with a very, very intense opposition and misunderstanding. So Father reserved certain content, and it didn't get into the exposition of the divine principle, which was essentially targeted at trying to recover Korean Christians, right? But actually, this is the core of what Father always wanted to be able to say, but wasn't able to say. He said, had he said it, they would have killed him at that time. So it goes on like this. These are various excerpts from the same speech. Then what did God expect from Adam and Eve? God expected absolute sex from them. You world leaders gathered here tonight, please learn this truth and take it back to your countries. If you start a campaign to secure absolute sex in your country, your families and your nation will go straight to heaven. Wow. I wish that you would center on the absolute, unique, unchanging and eternal sexual organ. Actually, it was written differently. Father said, the absolute sexual organ, the unique sexual organ, the unchanging sexual organ, and the eternal sexual organ. He had more sexual organs in there in his speech. And use this as your foundation to pursue God. This foundation should become the foundation of love, life, lineage and conscience, and of the kingdom of God on earth and in heaven. If all men and women admit that their sexual organ belongs to their spouse, we will all bow our heads and become humble when we receive our spouse's love. There's no love other than love for the sake of others. We must remember that we can find absolute love where we absolutely live for the sake of others. So, more content like that Father expressed on that occasion when Father founded the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. And maybe you remember this slide from Jack Corley's presentation about verse number 1 of the Family Pledge. And as it expresses, as the owner of Chunoguk, our family pledges by centering on true love to seek our original homeland and to establish the original ideal of creation, the kingdom of God on earth and in heaven. And this is a sort of annotation. I don't use this slide. This is an annotation of what Reverend said. It's a shortened version when he showed that slide, what he expressed. So I wrote it down on a couple of slides. Seeking our homeland is seeking after God's reproductive organs, the place to be born again. So we want to be born again, right? So we have to get to the place where we should originally have been born. Now, what is that place? Where can we seek love? Through the Father, who represents heaven and the seed of true love, and our Mother, who represents earth and the body of true love. My existence is the result of the love of my parents, their sexual organs and the love between them. God is our parent, therefore we come from God's reproductive organs, the meeting of the sperm of absolute love and the egg of absolute love. All living beings are born from the female, but there must be a seed, there must be the sperm. Within God, there must be something that is resembled by male and female, because God made His creation, everything's male and female. Did you make your children with your hands? No, with your reproductive organs. But Satan turned this into a dirty place. The lineage is the essence. Therefore, we are seeking for God's reproductive organs. The great change we seek is the change of lineage from Satan's to God's. Absolute sex education is the basis on which to reform society and to restore the order of love. So this is bringing us to that most essential point. So that's this is that place where God comes down, and God's love, which is the invisible causative love, becomes substantiated, or the invisible masculinity and femininity, or sexual organs as Father puts it, within God, they take on substantial form. And man and woman meet in love. Where's this love coming from? This love is coming from their relationship with God. So the husband is expressing love of God through his love for his wife. The wife is expressing her love of God through her love to her husband. Or to put it in another way, you can also say the wife is expressing her love for God and her father, and the husband his love for God and his mother. That's originally how it's supposed to be, right? And then they meet in this place where vertical love and horizontal love absolutely unite with one another. You know, everything that's happening horizontally in here, right, is all caused by this. There's nothing, there's nothing in this relationship that isn't coming from this source and from Heavenly Father's purpose of children. It's all absolutely true and faithful to that. That's how it should originally have been. And then that is our homeland that we're searching for. And that is the place to be reborn. And that place never existed. So even true parents were true parents in a way. Of course they really were. But as Father put it, they were not the perfected, completed, true parents. So Father was working with Mother through all that course we described, and guiding and leading Mother through to ultimately stand in a position where they can stand as absolutely perfected and completed true parents. And that will be Foundation Day. And on that day, we will be reborn through that place. And for the first time, God will have His place to come and settle, His place of Sabbath, His place through which we can be reborn as God's children of His direct lineage. So what is the desire of all human beings? Is to find their original homeland, the lost homeland from which I was born, or should have been born, my parents. The sperm is the seed of true love from the Father. The egg is the body of true love from the Mother. They unite centered on God's true love, the origin. The result is the creation of a true lineage. So actually we have a completely different understanding from this about everything. Of course about Jesus and what was the purpose of His life, but also very fundamentally about the purpose of marriage. So why do we marry? Because if we don't marry, we're incomplete. We don't have our partner of love. We can't express love. And we can't come to fully resemble God, because God is not the masculine God. Actually, God is the harmonization of masculinity and femininity. So it's the process for God to find His partner of love. Man and woman need to unite and become one. And it's in that place where man and woman meet in love that God really comes down and fully manifests Himself. And it was to have been on that first night of love between Adam and Eve. So we complete ourselves through love, through our partner, who is the owner of our sexual organs. So the consummation of love between Adam and Eve in their first night of love, that would have been such a very, very special moment for the completion of God's purpose of creation. Therefore, in a sense, that would have been the moment, not in a sense, that would have been the moment in which God, the Creator God, would have become complete, and the God of night would have found the God of day. And then from that place, of course, God's love, life and lineage would have expanded and developed. So here's Father explaining about that. So love, life and lineage, which do you think has the most value? Many people think that it is love. However, no matter how valuable love and life are, they are horizontal in nature. They appear and conclude within one generation. On the other hand, lineage is vertical in nature, and it continues forever, generation after generation. So this is the passing of God's love, from generation to generation, through this vertical axis to which all is connected in the love of God, which passes through that place where parents meet in love and then passes down to the next generation, and again through the next generation, marrying and passing that again. That's the lineage, the passing of love, the love of God from generation to generation. I think it's good to think about this again. This is from Father's speech that he read again and again and again and again and again, so many times, from July 2010 until his passing. And in the beginning of this speech, he talks about what his hopes are for us. All of you should model your life course on the path taken by the true parents and become families that pledge to inherit and fulfill the will of God that true parents have already accomplished. I pray that you will all become the representatives and the heirs of true parents. Please also inherit the teachings that I have bestowed upon this world and be triumphant in your life course. Like the true parents, you should become heavenly bridges for all your relatives and the members of your clan that are around you, and a God-centered leader that can guide your clan to God's kingdom. So I think that's a sort of a good lead in, and now I want to go to the content that is Father's content, of course, but Professor O, who's spent these last many, many years studying Father's words and studying about Father's life course, he put this together, and he had a number of different presentations, 3 particular presentations that I drew this content from, and somehow summarized and put it together. So this is from that content about preparation for Foundation Day. So he started off, in this particular section, he started off explaining about this explanation that Father gives about God of night and day, which we never heard before. And Father started talking about it all the time, in every time he spoke, and we didn't know what on earth he was talking about fundamentally. It took quite a long time to work it out, what it was that he was really referring to. So this is my notes from how Professor O explained it. The God of night, who's the God of night? That's the internal God, was there before the creation, but could not be seen, was the intangible God. So the God before creation. The God of day, the external God, or the body of God, was to have been perfected Adam and Eve. God would have related to his whole creation through them. So as the God of day, that means Adam and Eve, grows through the 3 stages, so the God of night also grows. This is an almost impossible idea for most religious people. God who's going to grow, right? God is going to be completed by his own creation. There's absolutely no comprehension of that in conventional religious understanding. Completely extraordinary, but absolutely true. The most difficult challenge to complete that is for Adam to reach the level where God can enter him and wear him as God's body or substantial form. Without reaching that oneness between God and Adam, Adam and Eve cannot progress to the next level. So do you remember there's different ways of trying to understand. There's like a process way. So you've got, if you think about the 4-position foundation, right? You've got God, and you've got Adam, and you've got Eve, and you've got their union. In origin, division, union, that sense. So God is the subject, Adam is the object, right? By being a good object, Adam becomes the subject, and then passes the love of God by sowing God's seed in Eve, who's the object, right? That's, in a sense, the process, right? And then through that, God becomes united through Adam with Eve in this first night of love, and then that makes the union. But you can see it in another way too, of course. Here's God, here's Adam, here's Eve. Where does God come down to? Actually, in a more complete sense, God comes down finally to the place where Adam and Eve meet in love, right? That's where God comes down to. So we can see it in those 2 ways, and that helps us to understand why, as we for example, when we were talking about the order under the dominion of God, we had God, Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel. Do you remember that content yesterday? Why that order? Because there is a process in that sense, but the ultimate place where God settles is where man and woman meet in love. So what is the purpose of creation? And the purpose in that sense of true parents, the fulfillment of the purpose of creation, which is through the fulfillment of the true parents. The purpose of creation, Adam and Eve. The completion of Adam and Eve's portion of responsibility is through completing the 3 blessings. So the 3 blessings is something amazingly precious, unbelievably gift from God, designed out of incredible love and devotion to the sake of the partner he didn't yet have. God designed all of that for our sake. But actually, our portion of responsibility is to receive it and substantiate it and make it real in our lives. And of course it never happened. But that was Adam and Eve's portion of responsibility. And then when something happened in the Garden of Eden, basically with the archangel, God also gave a commandment to protect the fulfillment of the three blessings, to prevent the fall. So Adam and Eve's responsibility to complete the three blessings and keep the commandment. So this means completing that world of love in attendance to God. So, parents' love, children's love, brothers and sisters' love, conjugal love. And what does that mean? It means Adam and Eve had to, in order to make that possible, in order to start that family, Adam and Eve had to meet God in the place where they meet each other in love. Absolutely meet God. And that meeting place would be the manifestation, the substantiation, the becoming visible of the love of God, out of which human beings were conceived within the invisible God. And then Adam and Eve's children become conceived in that act of love between one another. So when their children are born, their children are not just children of Adam and Eve, absolutely, even more deeply than that. They are the children of God, because Adam and Eve didn't make themselves. Adam and Eve didn't make this plan that they would meet and children would be born in their meeting place. They made none of it. So the children that are born are absolutely the children, the direct children of God. So Adam and Eve had to become God's holy temple, God's substantial body, and become one and allow God's love, life and lineage to come down on earth. So God is embodied in Adam and Eve. In that sense, because God is the creator of everything, of course God owns everything that he created. So God is the original owner of Adam and Eve's sexual organs. And actually they're modelled on this invisible, masculine, feminine love centering on Shimjum, the motivation of love that is happening within God. Which is, if you like, you can express, Father expressed, this is God's sexual organs. So God is the owner and the designer of us and the creator of us. So God is the vertical owner of our sexual organs. In other words, we shouldn't use our sexual organs without doing so in such a way that's pleasing to God, or without God's permission in that sense. And the horizontal owner of the sexual organ is actually not myself, it's my spouse. If a man, it's my wife. If I'm a woman, it's my husband. So Father explained this very strongly, as you read in that speech when he founded the Family Federation, and tried to talk to those leaders, those world leaders, and explain that your sexual organ belongs to your wife or to your husband. And also he explained there's one key, right? He told us there's one key, and if you don't have the key, you can't enter. He explained this. So also Father started to explain and talk about Adam and Eve meeting in love, and how when they met in love, he would have generated so much passion of love with the presence of God at the centre of it, that their love-making would have been at an incredibly high temperature. And Father talked about this, and talked about through this meeting in love at a very high temperature, it would bring an absolute purification at the same time. And Father talks very excitedly and very dramatically about love. And that first night of love between Adam and Eve was to absolutely belong to God as the vertical owner first, and then of course also to be experienced by Adam and Eve. So we need to be reborn from that place of the passionate love where God and man and woman meet in love, Adam and Eve meet in love on Foundation Day. So we need to prepare a pure heart with no trace of the fall. That's how Father described it, in order to reach to that day. So who has confidence to build a pure heart with no trace of the fall? That's not a simple matter, is it? But maybe we can make a big effort so that we understand the meaningfulness of the occasion, so that when we arrive there, at least for that time, we can prepare a very beautiful heart, and we can really understand preciously what's going on, and not just participate without really having that depth of heart or understanding. Because our understanding, of course, is opening the way to other people's understanding, because, of course, other people will not understand what's going on. They won't even know what's going on in the majority of cases. So this is about the fall of Adam and Eve and restoration. All these things, when there's a date, it's a date when Father spoke some words which are being basically drawn upon in the content that's below. So because of the fall, God could not marry, or as we studied yesterday, God remained a lonely bachelor. God's true sperm's long journey could not be completed. So God has been waiting for his seed to be sown. If his seed of love is to be sown in his object partner of love, which was woman, as we talked about yesterday, God began the whole process of creation from conceiving of his ultimate object partner, which is actually woman. And then God designed Adam to be God's body so that he could, through Adam, sow his seed in Eve. So Father talked about the long journey of God's true sperm. The core of cores of God's purpose of creation is the settlement of God's true sperm in Eve's egg or ovum. God's purpose of creation is the completion of the true parents through the act of love, through absolute sex, centered on God. The settlement of God's sperm, after which God can live through Adam and Eve and their descendants, generation upon generation. So the God of night is completed through the completion of the God of the day. This is the origin of Chunulguk, through Adam and Eve becoming one. So what does Chunulguk mean? It means the place where two become one. This is the start of God's nation, and this is Foundation Day. That's what Foundation Day is. The father and mother Father knew what he needed to do to liberate God. He had to make that place. He had to fulfill the responsibility that Adam and Eve couldn't fulfill, so that the world that God intended never happened. God's sperm never found the end of its journey. So God's sperm has been waiting to reach that moment, to be sown in that very special circumstance that should originally have occurred with Adam and Eve. So God has been the lonely bachelor. So people have been marrying and so on and so on, but God has never been at the center of that. It all started with completely the wrong motivation, and it created Satan's lineage, and it wasn't from God. And then also Professor O explained that since 2009, Father's been sharing in a much more frankly and openly and directly about his own status, in a sense, or his own, who he is fundamentally. So before, when Father was asked about his role as Messiah, he would say things like we're all supposed to be Messiahs, or he would, when he was asked the question, sometimes this question was associated with the sense that at some point Father was called. At that meeting maybe with Jesus when he was 15, 16 years old, Father was called. But Father expressed from 2009 on that he wasn't called, he was born with a status, a completely different status. The status of Adam and the status of Jesus, status of Father, which is not like any other human being, because other human beings all came from the fallen lineage. So completely distanced. So in 2009, Father said, I was born without any trace of the fall. I was born unrelated to the fallen blood lineage. I was born without original sin. I was born as the direct Son of God. I received God's heavenly seal from my birth. So, in other words, Father wasn't almost at liberty to express so clearly previously. But Father expressed very clearly in these last 3 years or so. Of course, Professor O gave these lectures to us here in Europe in August. So around about the 20th of August, for several days we had these lectures. And of course at that time Father was gravely ill in the hospital, under special care in the hospital. And we didn't know how the outcome would be. Of course we were all praying and making lots of conditions. We were even doing there when we were hearing the lectures from Professor O, we made special conditions throughout the day for Father's recovery. But what Professor O expressed to us was, true Father will continue to live after he goes to the spirit world through the Word, in other words, the textbooks and teachings that Father gave to us, the 8 textbooks and teachings, and also through True Mother and through his Abel and Cain children, in other words, the children of his direct lineage, who will be reborn again on Foundation Day. So the status of the true parents, who are the God of day to the God of night, is not transferable. They do not have a successor. Can you understand that? Because this is the origin, right? You don't have more than one origin, right? You have a single origin. So the single origin is where the God of night and the God of day meet. And that should have been the origin of all humanity through the relationship between Adam and Eve. But that got stolen away by Satan. And God was left, as we talked about yesterday. His wife was stolen. His lineage and family were all stolen. And Satan became his enemy on so many different levels, but most of all enemy of love. So true parents' position as the origin, as the God of day to the God of night, this is not transferable. So then this all connects very profoundly to Mother's course. So also we shared yesterday how in a sense, Mother is the first person to be transformed through Adam, who comes from God, the begotten Son of God. So all fallen people, right, they don't come from God. They come from the fallen lineage. Mother doesn't come directly from God, right? She's transformed in the relationship of love with Father. So God is the original absolute subject partner, right? The absolute subject partner creates an absolute object partner. So God, the God of Shimjum, created an object partner. God created Adam. So you have this poetic language of the creation story, right? In which God creates Adam and takes Adam's rib and creates Eve, right? So of course this is not to be understood literally, but what it means is there's an order. But what's this order to do with? It's that before God's purpose of creation can be completed, the critical point is Adam has to develop and mature himself to the point where God can wear him as his body. Because if God cannot wear him as his body, God cannot sow his seed through Adam and Eve and complete the whole process of creation, fulfill the whole process of creation. So God is the absolute subject partner, and Adam has to be his object partner. And then Adam, of course, masculine being, sows God's seed in Eve. It means Adam is the subjective being, and Eve is the objective being, and receives the seed of God through Adam. And then that first night of love, that completes the purpose of creation and the responsibility of Adam and Eve, and completes the whole purpose of creation. So this connects to what Father's talking about all the time: absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience. So Father explained that actually God is the first one to have absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience. What does God have absolute faith in? And absolute love for and absolute obedience to?
The principle.
In a sense, the principle. What is the principle? Well, the principle is like the laws of love, if you like. God is absolutely faithful to and committed to and obedient to love, or true love, and the principle is the way to live, the laws of love. So God absolutely keeps His own law of love, and also Father related that content. I never heard this before. I heard it from Professor O. So if I sort of draw on the wall again, Father related absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience to the origin, division, union, action. You know origin, division, union, action? So if you see on the wall here, right, 4-position foundation, then origin is there, right, and then the divided subject and the object. This is the division, and then they unite again. This is the union, right? So he related absolute faith to God absolutely believing in the principle of creation, right? Absolutely committed to Him as coming out of his plan of love, if you like. God is absolutely faithful to the plan of love. And then where's the plan of love substantiated? It's when Adam and Eve meet in love. So that's the substantiation. So from absolute faith comes absolute love. And then he expressed that the union that Adam and Eve make out of that, their relationship of love, and ultimately the children that are born of that, that's absolute obedience, to complete or to realize what was God's plan of love. So there's the invisible plan of love turns into the substantial realization of love through passing through the division stage where Adam and Eve meet in absolute love. So he related that to absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience. So, of course, Adam should have absolute faith, love, and obedience in God, and then Father also explained Eve should have absolute faith, love, and obedience in Adam. So that that content is fundamentally there in the brackets down below. So this is showing it in that sort of format. So the invisible origin and the visible origin become one through that meeting place. So this is the invisible origin, and this is the visible origin of life through love turning into lineage. It's here. And where do they meet? Where does the invisible origin and the visible origin meet? They meet in this place of absolute sex. So true Father substantiates the Word and then creates true Mother, brings true Mother to the level of being the wife of God. That is Foundation Day. That's the way Professor O explained it. So, in other words, Father, as Adam, the true Adam that came from God, has been raising and guiding and caring for and educating and loving Mother to raise to the point where she can stand in this position. So in a minute you'll see some diagram that's describing about that, and describing that finally on Foundation Day, Mother's in the position that Eve would have been had there been no fall. So in other words, she's in the position of absolutely representing in her own right this feminine aspect of God. And that's what hasn't been in that as complete a sense until Foundation Day. And then, of course, through the fulfillment of the four position of the origin, division, union, action, that becomes the four-position foundation. Instead of a union, you have down there, right, a child. The child is born from that union. And of course, what's going to happen on Foundation Day? Father and Mother will set that condition to make that place, right, in the middle there, and then we will be reborn through that place as the direct children of the direct lineage of God of night and God of day. So this is the completion of the purpose of creation seen through origin, division, union, action. So the completion of true parents, that's origin, division, union. That's the completion of the true parents. At the same time, it's the completion of the ideal family, because multiplication takes place next, and children are born, and the four-position foundation is established. And that then is the beginning of the kingdom, because when that family grows and expands, right? When that family grows and expands, of course, it turns into a nation. So that's the beginning. That's the starting point. The family that came from Adam and Eve. That's the starting point for the nation. So the completion of the purpose of creation is the completion of the true parents. The completion of the true parents is Adam and Eve meeting in love, meeting in absolute sex with God and each other. So there's different stages on the way to this. There's different stages of Father and Mother fulfilling this. So of course, identifying three primary stages, important, crucial moments. The first stage being the Holy Wedding in 1960, in March of 1960. And then the growth stage Holy Wedding in 2003. What an incredible battle Father went through to get to that place. So you see this, this man of 83 still looking very fit and well and dapper, but remarrying Mother then in 2003, battling to try and absolutely recover this place for God and fulfill human responsibility so as to liberate God and solve God's problem, and then through solving God's problem to be able to solve everybody's problem. The core of everybody's problem is we don't belong to God's lineage. We lost our parents, we lost our homeland. We were in search of our homeland. So Father's intention to give God his place to come down on earth so that there can be God, so people can be born from God's direct lineage, and to liberate humanity by allowing us to connect to our homeland and to be reborn. So the final stage then is the Foundation Day. And Foundation Day, of course, will be a registration blessing also for us. So this is that sort of diagram explaining those three weddings in terms of the relationship, the developing relationship of mother to God. So as you see here, so this is God, right? This is Father, and this is Mother, right? So at the Holy Wedding in 1960, what's the situation? Basically, God is wearing Father, right? But actually Mother's relationship to God is based solely on her connection to Father. There's not a direct connection. So she has this circle here, do you see, is representing that Father and Mother become one, but Mother's connection to God is absolutely through Father. And then in 2003 at Mother's wedding, Mother's moved from that place, right, to this place. So she's standing beside Father, and she's connected to God through Father, but in this position, not like a daughter's type of position, do you understand? But really in the position of, on the same level as Father, but still through Father connecting to God. So, subject, object, this type of process. But then when Mother's participating in this holy wedding at the time of Foundation Day, his Father relating directly to God as God's masculine expression, his Mother relating to God directly as God's feminine representation. So in her own right, not through her relationship with Father. And then that's recovering the place that should originally have been there when Adam and Eve met in love. And then from that place, everybody has to be reborn, including the true children. They need to take the holy wine. They need to participate in the Foundation Day blessing. So, how could we have ever known that these things needed to be done to liberate God and to liberate humanity? We had no comprehension whatsoever of what was necessary to be done. So I don't know if you can see this from the back of the room, it might be difficult. But this is a diagram which Professor O used to try and explain how Mother grew from stage to stage under Father's guidance. So this is about True Parents' course, as it were. This column over here, right? The very end one. And this is about Mother's sort of course and process. And this is about how, the third column is how her relationship with Father was being changed, and her relationship with God was being changed as she grew and progressed under Father's guidance and care. And these are the various dates when significant things occurred. So, for example, there's that date in 1999, the True Day of All Things, right? Which we talked about before, when Father said that Mother got the victory in 1999. So again, you can see Mother passing then through these stages as in relationship to Father like a daughter, then like a younger sister, and then there's a line there, and then just imagine that in a sense, not till 1991, and Mother began speaking. She did that speaking tour, starting off in Japan, and then the foundation of the Women's Federation, then speaking all over the world, leading up to 1999. It wasn't until that point, in a sense, that Mother could stand as a wife. And then becoming next to Father as the Father, she became the Mother when she fulfilled in 1999. And then he showed another stage as grandmother, and then as queen in 2003 at the blessing, then in 2003. So from 2003 at that blessing, Mother didn't bow to Father. And then 2006, that's entering the Chonjanggung, True Parents entering the palace. And when actually changed relationship to be able to relate to God such that Father and Mother, as an embodiment of God, are not anymore making kyongbei to God, because actually God is indwelling in True Parents. And then finally, 2013, mother able to stand in that original position Eve would have stood in, it had Adam and Eve fulfill their responsibility and there be no fall, to stand in a position to be not just the wife of Adam, but God sowing his seed through Adam's body into Eve. And in that sense, Eve becoming God's wife, and God's sperm, invisible sperm, finally finding its destination. And that's also then the fulfillment of the Trinity. God and Adam and Eve becoming one. And then the place is made through which everybody can be reborn. So in a way, if it's like, when you study the divine principle itself, and if you read, if you give someone the exposition of the divine principle and you ask them to read the Principles of Creation chapter, it's actually very, very difficult to understand what on earth it's talking about, because it's introducing so much new terminology and so many ideas that we didn't think about and we don't know, we're not familiar with. So hopefully now many things we're talking about here in a sense are very familiar to you. So then when we talk about, we know what we're talking about. But when you first study that, it's very, very difficult. I spent years studying that. The only reason I ever got to understand what any of it really meant is through trying to explain it to other people and being obliged to make a greater effort to try and understand it myself. And then through trying to teach it to other people, getting stuff from God that I didn't know, that came out of my mouth, that wasn't from me, do you understand? And then you start to realize and understand more things. So in the same way, you might feel this is all, as we went through all that course that Father and Mother walked through and all these different holy days and declarations and, numbers and all these different things, it might feel difficult to comprehend. But please understand, it isn't technical. It isn't to do with Father making long names for different events. This is to do simply with the fact that Father understood God is the lonely bachelor. God is the miserable one. God is the whipped one. God is the one who doesn't have anybody. And crying for days and days and days, and months and months and months. And then desperately beginning the search to find out how to solve God's problem. It all comes from that. So Father made all this incredible understanding of what needed to be done in order to liberate God, and in order therefore to make the place that would liberate all humanity, as an act of love for the enemy, which God could not do himself, because it's to do with human responsibility, not to do with... God didn't fail in anything. God needed somebody who would love the enemy enough to make this place through which everybody could be saved. So Professor O also talked about Father's expression about Foundation Day will make the place where we will live together with God, the God of night and the God of day. And he asked the question, where will that place be? Where is that place that we're going to live together with the God of night and day? So in the introduction he expressed the key words for the current providence leading up to Foundation Day are Foundation Day and God's wedding. Foundation Day and the true parents' world of heart, let's live together. That's what God wants to do. God wants to live together with us. True parents want to live together with us. God of night is looking for the God of day to be completed, and then wants to live together with his family, with his children. Where is the place that let's live together will actually happen? What place is that referring to? Where is the place that we will live in attendance to God, God of night and God of day, true parents? Invisible true parents and visible true parents. Let's think centering on the Garden of Eden in the original creation. That's how he sort of led into this section. So, and then he referred to something that happened at the beginning of last year. And I don't know if you remember that occasion. It's a couple of photos from that time. This is actually one gentleman from Britain, a Sikh gentleman, Professor Harbhajan Singh, who went representing Sikhism. And there's another gentleman connected to Israel but also to Spain, Professor Haim, who went representing Judaism. And there were religious leaders here. And Hyunjinim had planned an interreligious ceremony. But then suddenly Father and Mother turned up. And Father completely cast to one side all the plans that had been in place and remade the whole event centering on his direction, and was absolutely adamant that they shouldn't do what they were going to do, they should do absolutely what he told them to do. And later on, Father explained that this occasion had a very special meaning. This was the creation ceremony of the heavenly nation. And do you remember we got this candle for the establishment of the heavenly kingdom or the heavenly nation? And Father asked that we should all receive this candle. And he talked about a flame. There is one fire or one light, and there is one religion. That's written at the bottom here. And Father reordered the whole event so that he had to give the flame to Hyungjinim, and Hyungjinim had to give the flame to the religious leaders, and recreated this order. So the handing over the heavenly nation creation holy candle, and the handing over of the heavenly nation creation holy salt. So Father completed this, in these last months of his physical lifetime through that particular event. And throughout these last few years, Father's been completing so many things and finalizing so many things. And of course, Professor O explained in a lot more detail than I'm going to in this shorter presentation about all those different things. So then, what is the heavenly nation? In an external sense, the heavenly nation is the fourth Israel. What does this mean? It means there should be a substantial nation. Ideally, what should that nation be? Clearly, that nation should be the reunified Korea, centering on the true parents. But what's the internal meaning of that nation? Of course, that means the people that come from that belong to Chunul-guk. What does that mean? It means the people that are reborn through that place, actually, where Adam and Eve meet in love, through the place of absolute sex. So Father started to talk about Chunul-guk from 2001, and Foundation Day is what? It's the day of origin. It's the day when Chunul-guk, that we've been preparing for through these past 12 years from the coronation ceremony in 2001, is finally realized. So then that should be the era of the independent country, Father talked about it as. The era of realm of victory of the independent nation. Ideally that should be, a substantial nation. And the era of oneness. The internal and external nation should unite in an independent nation, the unified Korea, where the true parents of heaven and earth hold the authority. Foundation Day is the origin on which all of this must be built. So we already explained how Father was trying to find a way to bring about the reunification of Korea, trying to make unity with political leadership in America and Korea and Japan and all over the world in order to make this possible. So the Foundation Day is the start then of the heavenly family. What does the heavenly family mean? It means it's the day when the heavenly couple is manifested. When Adam and Eve meet in love as they would originally have met, had God's creation happened as God originally intended it to be. And the day then when the heavenly parents are manifested or substantiated. That means the true parents of heaven, earth and humankind. And therefore it will be, in this circumstance now on Foundation Day, it will be a day of re-blessing. When the heavenly family's direct children, that means the true children, will be reborn and become manifested. Be reborn through that absolute completion of the responsibility of Adam and Eve. That absolute place where father and mother are both standing in the original position that Adam and Eve should have been standing in. And where we can be born from the direct lineage. So true children too must be re-blessed that day. And then also we get the re-blessing. As the spiritual children, as the blessed children, we become also reborn as direct children of the God of night and the God of day. And then also Father talked about receiving the heavenly seal or heavenly stamp. And Mother showed at the time when she spoke after the period after Father Sungwa, she showed this embroidery of that heavenly seal. Father had already talked about that in the 5th month by the heavenly calendar of last year. Well, it's this year still, of course, in heavenly calendar terms. So this is something I never ever heard before. I've heard it for the first time in August from Professor O, and this is something that Father began to explain comparatively recently. And it's about the process of the fall, in a sense, and the process of the restoration of the fall. So, of course, in order to complete restoration, we need to recover what took place at the time of the fall. So Father explained that from the time of their birth, this is talking about, the time of Adam and Eve, fundamentally. From the time of their birth until the age of 14. So in Korean, right, you're one when you're born, right? You're 1 year old when you're born, right? Until they were 14 years old, Adam and Eve lived just in a world where they could only had awareness for others. What does this mean? It means there was no element at all of a self-centered perspective. Nothing. Because of course God doesn't have any element of a self-centered perspective, and they were the creation of God and they were the children of God. They were growing up, of course, but they didn't have anything to do with that. And they only heard the sound of God, or the voice of God. They didn't hear anything else. So Father explained, normally we consider the fall took place approximately when Adam and Eve were at the age of 16. So we consider that's the point when they were transformed into Satan's lineage, right? That's when the fall took place. But Father explained, to complete the process of restoration, we not only have to get back to a place before the fall, we have to get back to a place before the commandment. So Father explained that when the commandment was given, what does this mean? It means that God was protecting a situation that he could see was a dangerous circumstance. So what was going on? There was another voice. There was another sound. And this was not the sound or the voice of God. This was the sound from the archangel. And this sound was, completely different motivation, from God. And coming from what? Coming from a self-centered, In other words, the archangel moved from supporting God and helping Adam and Eve to now doing something that may have looked the same, but the motivation behind it is not for the sake of God and not for the sake of Adam and Eve. What the archangel is doing is for his own sake, pursuing his own plan, broken trust with God, not seeking to serve God, not being able to deny himself, feeling lack of love and resentment, and then relating in order to meet his own need, not to fulfill God's will or to love others. So that was the beginning then of selfishness, if you like. The beginning of an awareness of self in this very unhealthy sense. So at that point then, God gave the commandment, and approximately, Father expressed that's around about the age of 14. So in order to really recover the situation, to come back to a position in the Garden of Eden of absolute purity, we should get back to the place before the age of 14. So in a sense, that is ultimately we should be trying to get our heart and prepare ourselves in order to meet God and true parents, in order to meet the God of night and the God of day, and on the foundation day. So, get the blessing and change the lineage. It means no original sin. But get to this place means no awareness for self. And Father talked about, Father made some way forward providentially, set up conditions to get to that place. So Father talked in 2011, in the 10th month by the heavenly calendar. He talked about getting back to a place 1 month before the commandment was given, in providentially, in True Parents' course. So this is about Father's from 2010. Father began this assembly to proclaim, and then in 2012, 3rd month, 22nd day, Father made this special declaration or proclamation. The internal and the external God was separated. In other words, the God of night and the God of day was separated due to the fall. The place of completion of restoration is the place before the commandment not to eat was given. Father said these words, Samyamun and Hakjahan, who are the true parents, return to the place of completion of restoration and make everything pure and offer everything to God. God has recovered the authority of Creator. True parents become the absolute Lord, the absolute embodiment, the God of the day to the God of night. God's blessings will be together with them and for eternity. That sort of meaning. And what about us in relationship to the Foundation Day? We will be reborn in the place of completion of restoration, where there's only awareness for others. We will cleanse the recognition for self, or awareness for self, or the selfishness, if you like, that completely wrong voice, wrong mind, wrong attitude, and eliminate the cause. Elimination of the spirit world's awareness for self is our part in that, is the 210 generation ancestors' liberation and blessing. The elimination of the physical world's awareness for self is the fulfillment of the tribal messiahship mission. And we will get to the place then where we only hear the sound of God. And how do we fulfill that tribal messiahship responsibility? By giving the blessing to others, by sharing Father's autobiography, by internalizing the original divine principle, by practicing Hundoke and protecting our lineage and defending our lineage so that Satan cannot invade it. And the minimum type of condition through reaching out to others, through witnessing and through bringing people to the blessing. So, of course, Hyungjin made this guidance to us to make a list of 12 people and to bring 3 families to the blessing. So, of course, reality is probably all of us will not have all of this prepared on Foundation Day. And we know, we're filling in the forms now, right, to participate in Foundation Day. And there are certain conditions to fill in the forms too. But fundamentally, absolutely, God wants to give the grace of it to everybody. The only reason to request conditions is so the grace has a place to land and take root. If you're going to plant something, you want to have a place prepared to plant it in, right? So the only reason to ask something is to help us to make ourselves a foundation, so that this very, very precious, unbelievable gift of grace that is Foundation Day can be planted in us and have some place where the soil is fertile that we can plant and take root and grow and develop. That's the reason to ask something. It's not for to get something back, but it's actually to enable us to be able to receive the grace of Foundation Day. So the key words of Foundation Day: let's live together. Let's live together in which place? In the place before the commandment, do not eat. Let's live together in the place where there's only awareness for others. Let's live together only listening to God's sound. Let's live together centered on one tradition, one blood lineage, and one resemblance. That's the place where God will reside. Let's live together attending the true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. So that was Professor Rowe's explanation of where it is we're going to live together. Let's attend the true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. The heavenly nation is created centered on the heavenly family. So no heavenly family, no Adam and Eve, no absolute sex, no heavenly family, no heavenly nation. The heavenly family needs the heavenly couple, and the heavenly parents, and the heavenly children. The heavenly nation comes from the heavenly family, and the blessed families the heavenly family and the blessed families come together as the Cain and Abel families to make up the heavenly family. The heavenly nation is the world of order centered on the heavenly family. So no heavenly family, no true parents, no heavenly nation. It's not possible. So why couldn't the heavenly nation begin? Because there wasn't the absolutely completed true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. The God of day to the God of night. So, as it expresses in the original divine principle, everything starts from one starting point, from one God, from one Adam and Eve, from one invisible God of night and one visible God of day, Adam and Eve. Everything starts from one set of parents. So in that heavenly nation then, there's one religion, one tradition, one lineage. as it would originally have been had Adam and Eve fulfilled their responsibility. So of course this is the beginning of everything. So reality is, of course, people don't know about this. Even for us to study this or listen to this, we need a lot of foundation, right? And even then, although we can begin to understand it, to really be one with it, or to do it or become it, that's not an easy thing. But of course, how can we respond to true parents? Incredible lifelong investment at the risk of their life to make this fulfillment of human responsibility as the true parents. It's by us becoming an object to them. So, true parents can't fulfill everything, of course. They need to have their object partner. And so we're coming to Foundation Day. We're not coming to Foundation Day to make sure we get into heaven, right? To make sure we don't go to hell. So don't ever do anything so that you can get to heaven. Also, I shouldn't be doing things so I will go to heaven. I shouldn't be doing things so that I will not go to hell, right? So don't do it like that, because that's not very satisfying, not very happy. That can be done with all sorts of feeling of pressure and fear, and that's not at all what it's all about. And why do we want to be there on Foundation Day? It's because true parents did so much, had such an incredible filial heart to God, to find a way to liberate God and find a way to liberate us. So being there is a response of love, right, to true parents and to God, to the God of night and God of day. We're not going there for ourselves, we're going there for their sake. And what will happen thereafter, for sure, if we come very close to God of night and God of day, what will God of night and God of day expect of us? Because actually the reality is, there's still a lot of people not in the homeland, right? Still a lot of people not in God's house. So the task of reaching out to others and making this available to all humanity, that still needs to be done. And the task of substantially restoring a nation, because we don't have the unified Korean Peninsula. We don't have the homeland. Father declared the homeland. Father declared the conditions are established so Korea can stand as the homeland, but actually reality is, it isn't substantiated yet. The conditions there. So when we had our leaders meeting the other day, right at the end of it, our new continent director, Reverend Ahn, was expressing what's different after Foundation Day. And he expressed it means that something is fulfilled, but it's not as substantiated as it ought to be yet. It's fulfilled in the spiritual world. And he related that to what we've been studying about, the end of communism. First, Father declared the end of communism through the conference in 1985, when it seemed like an absolutely absurd statement. The fall of the Soviet Empire, when actually the Soviet Empire has been fundamentally expanding right up until 1985, and has amassed this huge military power, nuclear missiles and all the rest of it. What on earth are you talking about, the fall of the Soviet Empire? And yet, within 4 years, the Berlin Wall fell, and another 2, and the Soviet Empire ceased to exist. It was disbanded. So unbelievable. So the explanation that he gave is that Foundation Day means that there's a huge change occurring in the spiritual world, and this will manifest itself in the physical world. Of course, how much it manifests also depends upon human responsibility still. Of course it does, but an incredible responsibility fulfilled by true parents. And very, very important that you and I are there on Foundation Day with the best possible heart and appreciation and understanding we can have, because what a tragedy it would be if there was no one in the object position, no one to receive. That's how it's been for God and true parents so many times. So this is talking about God's holy wedding and the proclamation of 4-dimensional registration. That's a familiar term, isn't it? 4-dimensional registration. You all know what that is, don't you? I don't have to tell you, do I? When Father's speaking this sort of way, right, it's like it's not easy to relate artistically, is it? That's what I'm getting at. So you hear all these things about all these conditions and all these things, and not so easy to understand. But please understand, this is absolutely to do with God's love for us, Father's love for God, and Father and Mother's, true parents' love for us. So it's to do with restoring this Old Testament age. That's to do with the first dimension of registration. The age of all things, which is the Old Testament age. Second dimension of registration to do with the age of the children, which was the New Testament age. Third registration to do with the age of the parents, which is the completed Testament age. And fourth dimension of registration, which we're entering, is the age of God, which is the age of the realm of the fourth Adam. In other words, we're all reborn through the third Adam, and we're to become the fourth Adams. Of course, we're not all Adams. There's lots of Eves there as well, right? And lots of families there, but that's what it's referring to, that's what it means. For the four-dimensional registration, the registration as the heavenly family centered on God, the registration of true parents as the God of day to the God of night, and then our registration, because it'll be a registration blessing, we'll be registered as part of the direct lineage of the true parents. And of course that needs to be substantiated in our lives. So for blessed couples, this is, also we went a journey, we went a process, anyhow, through connecting with Father and Mother's blessing and our blessings. So many of us were blessed before 2000 when we got the registration blessing. And then also 2003, True Parents blessing, we received another blessing, then another Holy Wine, then 2009, the Cosmic blessing we received again, and now Foundation Day. So Father's been, giving us grace at each of these stages to try and take us to that day. But it's up to us to prepare some ground for it. So this workshop is about preparing my heart and preparing my understanding, so that I can come to Foundation Day knowing a little bit better what it is. So all of True Parents' responsibilities are completed. That's what Father expressed. True Parents and the True Parents of heaven and earth and humankind have completely settled. Our God, our family saw completion and perfection. That's what Father talked about. Our family saw completion and perfection, talking about himself and Mother and their responsibility. And he talked about God's 95% and True Parents adding the 5% to complete human responsibility by restoring what Adam and Eve couldn't do. And of course, very importantly for True Parents to have this extending to the next generation, so as to have amongst their children those who are uniting with one another and uniting with the True Parents. So Professor O referred to Kukjinim and Hyungjilim's cooperation with one another and supporting and attending the True Parents. And then of course then it's our responsibility to get reborn and fulfill our portion of responsibility. So this is again some sort of heavenly mathematics. Clearly God's responsibility is much more than ours. So now it became 96%. And we have to do 4%, unlike True Parents who have to do 5%. But what does 5% mean? It means 95% of the time you can relax, take it easy, drink fruit juice beside the sea, and sunbathe. That's what it means, isn't it? No, it doesn't mean that, because we understand the 5% is, True Parents giving absolutely everything at the risk of their life. So 4% means that we have less to do than True Parents. Of course we do, because they've created the place through which to be reborn, which never existed. But nonetheless, we have something to do which is, can only be done with our full heart and our full sincerity and our full offering of ourselves and our full knowledge and understanding as well of what it is we're doing and why we're doing it, and our full heart out of our love for God and our love for and appreciation for True Parents and our love for humanity and our desire to love and save our family, our tribe, and so on. So this is explaining that process in terms of what we talked about before: origin, division, union, action, and so on. So, and then that becoming the four-position foundation. So, anyhow, this is that's true. Good, got it. So this is origin, division, union, action, right? Okay, so God, Adam and Eve, union. But this is the four-position foundation, right? God, Adam and Eve, children. So not just the union of Adam and Eve, or the Trinity, which is there. So God and Adam and Eve meet and become one here, right? That's the Trinity. But that oneness is expressed here. This is the union of Adam and Eve, of course, but centered on God. So God's at the middle of it. So that's the Holy Trinity. But then out of fulfilling the origin, division, union, action, you get the four-position foundation. In other words, from the place of absolute sex, love becomes life and creates lineage. And you put the two together, and this is a combined diagram. So this is Professor O putting the two together. So from the fulfillment of origin, division, union comes the four-position foundation. And our rebirth in that sense as well. And this is again diagrammatically showing the same content. God's 95%, true parents 5%, and then 100% fulfillment, the heavenly family, the Abel family. So without the Abel family, the heavenly kingdom, the nation of God cannot begin. Because of course that's how it was originally going to begin with Adam and Eve's family. And then for us, true parents in that position, myself, my wife, or yourself, your husband, or yourself, your wife, our portion of responsibility to complete, our responsibility, of which we were aware of some type of content. We should do those things that Father said at the beginning of his assembly. We should become a bridge to our relatives, to our neighbours, to our friends, and we should become a leader who can be trusted and followed and guide people to God's kingdom. And then through that we fulfill our responsibility. Of course, our own children, but also our spiritual children, our physical children, the same sort of pattern we talked about before in relationship to the true family, where we're the spiritual children and true children are the direct children in that sense. So God is then, through this foundation day then, and the fulfillment of it, God is embodied in Adam and Eve. God meets and marries his substantial wife, Eve. God multiplies his direct children and completes the heavenly family. And the heavenly nation is created through the expansion of the heavenly family. That's this one origin, one starting place. That's it. So, please, I think it's not easy because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of new terminology, there's many, many things that are not easy to relate to artistically, right? So it needs quite a bit of chewing on it and becoming familiar with it so that those things don't become a barrier that block you from feeling for it. And always thinking back to the things we started off with yesterday about what God's attitude has been to his enemy. And about how we have to have the same sort of heart. Otherwise we won't be able to get the victory. We won't be able to support true parents. And we'll end up not being in the right place, not hearing only the sound of God, right? So if out of me is coming are many difficult feelings and, unresolved, resentful, blame, hurt, pain, things, this is not the best way to meet with on Foundation Day. So we need to, through this process over these next 19 days, whatever it is, we want to really try and clean up all those things and get to capture, in essence, what it is we want to capture. We want to understand how much we're beloved by God. How much, although we've been the enemy, God has been living for our sake. How much Father has been, what a men should be thrown away, right? Because they're fallen atoms, they should be thrown away and discarded. But God made a way, Father made a way for us to be recycled. So we can become human beings. And we can have the right to have children and to possess property. And in a sense we already had our children. People like me, we already had our children, right? But in a sense, we didn't really have fully yet the right to have them. But God's providence had to move forward, and Father made that way. But now all those blessed families, from 3 couples and 36 couples, right the way through, they're all coming now again to be reborn, along with the true children on Foundation Day. Anyhow, I won't go on anymore. Thank you very much.
Thought that just came to me just when you were saying those last sentences was in one way when I joined I always wished I could have joined earlier. Well, why didn't I know about this before? And if you ever had that kind of feeling, probably it was obviously because I couldn't join before, I wouldn't have made it. When you think about what the 36 couples had to go through. But now we're all sort of together making this offering with all of those people. Our whole community, global community, together with true parents. It's such a touching, deep thing to be able to stand together, even with the true children, and participate in this grace, all of us together, not just our community, but our whole worldwide community. It's incredible, isn't it, when you think about it?